Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the weekly Tuesday show. As today we return to the AWA Remco Series 2 review. Now, last week we kind of looked at Series 1 and I kind of mentioned, yes, the LJNs and the AWA Remcos, they were kind of in battle as to see which toy line were going to be the very first American wrestling figures to make it to market. Now, Japanese wrestlers, they were the first official wrestlers, first live action wrestlers to actually get their figures to market. Right now in America, they always had like these no name bootleg characters, but you didn't have like official name recognized characters. You didn't have Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair action figures available, so you always had like the blanketed characters. So when they started getting these licensed characters to market, that was a difference maker. And children finally had the opportunity to start associating real life characters with the people, the superstars, the legends that they saw on actual TV. Now, for me growing up, I think the USA Network is where we used to watch WWF. So I, I don't remember really watching anything else other than the USA Network. Uh, you know, ESPN, that really wasn't anything that I used to watch wrestling or boxing or anything like that when I was young. So, like, I didn't start watching ESPN until I got into baseball later on. So, and, baseball tonight and stuff like that. But I heard like AWA, that's what kids in the 80s used to, where they used to come home and watch AWA wrestling. But so a lot of talk was AWA started out in 84. And when you look at most commenters, most cataloging, they have 1984 listed as the official year of release for the American Wrestling Association AWA Remco figures. But when you look at the back of the carding, copyright 1985. So that's basically what I'm going off of. I'm going off of Series 1 being released in 1985. But Series 2, there's not even a question. Most people say Series 2 released 1985. Back of the cards tell us copyright 1985. Series 2 is a no doubter, 1985. And like Series 1, every figure has a 2 pack. And there are only 4 tag teams. So another 8 figures released in Series 2. The first pack we are going to look at is yet another release which is going to feature nepotism. It's going to feature Greg Gagne. So, Greg Gagne and tag team partner Kurt Hennig. Now, there are a couple of things of note when it refers to this particular packaging. I'd like to start off with Mr. Perfect in particular. When you actually look at his name on the packaging, notice that it says Kurt Henning. Henning. Kurt Henning. Now, his last name is Nig, not Nnig, or Nning. So, it's supposed to be Hennig, not Henning. So, did I spell that right? H Hennig, Hennig. Yeah, that last N in there is not supposed to be there. So, I think I spelled the first one 2 N's, but yeah. So that typo. And of course, Greg Gagne with the High Flyers in Series 1, and then of course coming back with Series 2, and he gets his second figure in 2 series. He is basically your Hulk Hogan of Hasbro, because you know what? Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Macho Man, those guys, $1 million Man, even. Uh, Figures in Series 1, got figures again in Series 2. Exclude $1 million Man, came back with new figures in Series 3. Hogan and Macho Man back in Series 5. $1 million Man came back in Series 9. So you constantly got these same characters over and over again, right? Because they're your biggest superstars. Now, I talked about it in last series. Greg Gagne wasn't exactly well regarded as the greatest wrestler in the world, but he is the son of owner Vern Gagne. So, yeah, Vern, when it comes to, his business and, when he comes to create his figures, yeah, he is going to put his son in, get his son his own action figures as many times as possible. Why not? I'm deeply surprised that Vern himself, who was owner, who was promoter, who was wrestler, and darn it, 10-time heavyweight champion, I'm surprised Vern Gagne didn't get his own action figure. What the heck? Why not? That's crazy. The most tenured champion in terms of longevity as heavyweight champion and the most belted champion in AWA history. Why did he not get his own wrestling figure? And Vern Gagne was a very coveted and beloved. Actual, he was actually an Olympian and a collegiate champion, collegiate wrestler. So why did Vern Gagne not get his own figure? That's crazy, right? But I mean, behind the scenes, Greg Gagne, I mean, he was part of the inspiration. He did help build up the AWA to what it was. So it's not like he didn't champion the promotion or anything like that. So I think every character in some regard deserved what they, you know, what they got. It's like the WWF with LJNs. You may not have been a big fan of like Outback Jack or Ted Arcidi, right? Guys like that. But I mean, everyone has their credentials to get their own figure. Now, the Gandhi Raiders actually do come with like a couple different variants. I only have just this one particular. And when it comes to Remco's, they're so hard to tell the difference. Like I've talked about it before. Some come with like hard-headed figures, some with like soft heads, and there's also some kind of difference when it comes to like the actual clothing. Now, here's an also difference when you look at the packaging, and there are a lot of sellers who have the Gandhi Raiders on eBay, for example. Sometimes you have open cloth, sometimes they're closed like so, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're variants. That just means that maybe they were packaged differently. So just because you might find Greg Gagne with like an open shirt, it could literally be this exact same figure. So I don't want to waste that extra money, $400-500 for something that's really just the exact same thing. It just looks differently because it's packaged differently, unless it's a legitimate variant. So, but just like the high flyers, probably another top 10 best Remco figure. And and here's another update. I I bit the bullet. I hate them, but I bought them. I did have what did I have before? I had not Rick Martel. I think it was Ric Flair versus Larry Zbyszko thumb wrestlers on card previously. I went ahead, I bought I think it was Animal versus Rick Martel, and was it Greg Gagne versus Hawk? Was that the other one? I really wasn't paying attention to the cards. I know Legion of Doom, uh, Animal versus someone. I probably wrote Rick Martel, and then Animal versus someone else. I don't think it was Greg Gagne, but it's got Greg Gagne in the back of here, so maybe. But yeah, I bought the last two cards that I needed, and I bought them for the sole purpose of this series. So, but they're horrible. When they talk about thumb wrestlers, and I'm gonna mention, they really do look like thumbs. Unlike the LJNs, which are actual playable wrestling figures, but the card backing is pretty incredible. Like I said, Remco, they do not cheap out when it comes to the actual graphics. So I will have this as part of the last video with the thumb wrestlers, all three sets. I did get the new belt a couple weeks ago, so I have that. I do have one of the wrestling rings new in box. I also have two additional brown wrestling rings. One hard, I think it's made out of wood, and one cardboard. But I'm still missing the steel cage ring. You know, with the red canvas and the little two prongs and everything. So hopefully I'll be able to find that and buy it before that last video, so I can have that video as complete as possible. All right. The Gagne Raiders with Greg Gagne. So, Greg Gagne, obviously, he was active in the 70s, 80s, but basically, once the AW went out of business in 91, that was it for him. Uh, he really wasn't active after that. I mean, I don't think anyone else would really want to bring him on to any other promotions. And really, what else was there outside of WCW, WWF, really, So, but an awesome figure nonetheless. Nonetheless. And what do I always say when it comes to, figures like this, right? Throughout the decades, and I'll talk about it with the next set of figures we're going to look at, there's always seems to be, especially up until the 90s, you probably couldn't do it today because a lot of people are soft, but Native Americans, Chief Woohoo or Chief McDaniel or Tatanka, guys like that, right? You always just seem to have like Native American wrestlers in professional wrestling. You always seem to have like the sort of, bikers, like the Smoking Guns and the Long Riders, guys like that, right? Even Adonis and Murdoch, had like this biker gang type of look to it. So you always have like these biker types. You always have military men in wrestling. Colonel De Beers, Sergeant Slaughter, Corporal Kirchner, the Gagne Raiders as examples. So there's certain specific type of wrestlers that always seem to be very prevalent in wrestling, whether it's AWA, NWA slash WCW, WWF, etc. Any of these other promotions, non bigger elite promotions. But who was it? It wasn't Kurt Hennig. Yeah, it was Greg Gagne. So I think it was Greg Gagne, and he actually joined forces. I think with like what was it, the Cobra Force? I think it was called, with Sergeant Slaughter. Yeah, I think that's what they formed back in like the mid '80s with AWA. Yeah, I think that's what kind of got them together with Kurt Hennig before they became the Gagne Raiders, or I could have that backwards. But I think that's right after, or at least a few years after the High Flyers broke up. Now the High Flyers with Jim Brunzell and Greg Gagne, I mean, they were like multiple tag team partners, but obviously Jim Brunzell, he jumped ship, went to WWF, and had huge success with B. Brian Blair as the Killer Bees. So, but they took on this short lived tag team thing with the whole military gimmick and everything, alongside Sergeant Slaughter and with Kurt Hennig. Uh, Leo up on Facebook right now. He has one of his Kurt Hennig figures up for sale on eBay, and he has a particular sort of Kurt Hennig Mr. Perfect figure, and I brought up a couple of different Mr. Perfects that I have because I'm trying to look at the head and I'm trying to see, like, he said it's a rare particular figure, and I'm looking at his on eBay and I'm kind of looking at mine. I'm like, I'm kind of seeing like what's the difference between the figures. because like here is like another one, right? And they look exactly the same, right? Now this one is kind of like a beater, and with the face paint, it's really hard to tell the difference. But it looks, if you look past the face paint, it looks identical. It doesn't look like there's really a difference to it. But maybe if I scrub off the face paint, maybe there really is a difference to the look. Because he's kind of giving me that type of smirk. But I've never really seen a difference between any of the Mr. Perfect type figures. But yeah, man, one of my favorite pieces, nonetheless. All right, and then we've got the Long Riders. Kind of funny in the '90s. You got Billy and Bart Gunn, who obviously also went by the term the Long Riders. Now, obviously, when I knew them in the 1990s, I think Hasbro, I think the Smoking Guns, but they went by a couple different names. Smoking Guns obviously the most popular, but the Long Riders was also a popular name that Billy and Bart Gunn went by. But we're not talking about those Long Riders. We're talking about Bill and Scott Irwin. So Wild Bill Irwin is on the right, and Scott Hog Irwin here on the left. Scott Irwin with the full on facial hair, and Bill Irwin with just kind of like the long beard or a mustache. So Scott Irwin, I don't know. He died. He's not alive today. I don't know when he died, but he's been gone for a while. I know. I think Bill Irwin is still alive today. The Goon, the Goon. Wow. Uh, no, really, he was the Goon. Stupid. Like, what the hell kind of lame ass Wayne Gretzky gimmick is that? I guess in the '90s, late '90s, they try to turn like their enhancement workers, jobber types, into like more of these more gimmicky type of stuff. Like your Papa Shango type of things, right? And they didn't just want that for their superstars; they wanted their jobbers to have gimmicks the same sort of way, like your TL Hopper type of gimmick, and they kind of create like this Wayne Gretzky hockey type player, the Goon, and Bill Irwin. Ridiculous. I mean, he wasn't even in WWF very long. I think he was in WWF for like a matter of months. But I mean, you were a superstar for how many years? '70s, '80s, and in the I think when in WCW had some success, if I'm not mistaken, and then you're relegated to mop up duty in WWF. No wonder he freaking quit. But again, more important figures. What sucks is their robes are very hard to come by. So if you basically are trying to purchase these figures on eBay, Mercari, wherever, unless they already come with the accessories, you're basically SOL if you're trying to find these loose. I mean, maybe you could find someone that customizes them and trying to get them that way, but it's like I said, if you got these figures and you're trying to find just the accessories, it's extremely difficult. All right, Scott Irwin, Bill Irwin. So on my Bill Irwin loose figure, I I got like a Rick Martel jacket on him because I mean I was fortunate enough to get a loose accessory for Scott, but that's about it. Uh, no hats, no sunglasses. You see these guys that come with hats and sunglasses, and the one that I have is the chiseled abs variant. These are both the chiseled abs variants as well. I don't know what the hell these championship belts are. They look like He-Man belts or something, but at a time I was just trying to put all these different belts on like all of these different figures, and they look nice. It's fine. Belts match, and they're a tag team, so I'm like, it's they're adequate. So that was the chiseled abs. Now, luckily, just this morning, I did get the flabby belly variants in. Now, in my last live show on Saturday, I did talk about buying two variants of the flabby bellies. So now this right here is more than just somebody customizing the figure and like repaint and painting it. Look at that. That's not even that's not paint. Okay, somebody swapped out the legs. That's not original legs right there. That's obviously original. This is a complete original figure, but look at that. When I first saw this, I just thought, somebody painted the legs or something, or maybe that was like a prototype. I don't know, but like I just thought, maybe a kid back in the 80s or 90s, maybe they painted the legs, but and then I got it and I looked at that, I'm like, no. I think a customizer maybe hit this was a broken figure and maybe they swapped it out with like a He-Man figure or something. I mean, I there was what were they? I think these were listed for like $45. I put it off for like $30, and I knew they weren't worth no $45. And I think even at $30, I think was an overpay. But I didn't have the flabby bellies, and I wanted them for this video, so I wanted to make sure that I offered a large enough price where I felt like the buyer or the seller was gonna accept, and he did. And then that same night, like probably less than an hour, probably even less than 30 minutes later, I found, probably within minutes, I found another set, and it was on auction. And, the auction was ending probably less than 12 hours later, and no bids. And it was a starting bid of $12. Submitted an offer for like $14, and that seller accepted. So I ended up with two flabby belly variants. But that seller never hasn't shipped yet, so at least I got one pair in. I don't know if how hefty these guys were, so uh when I think flabby belly variants, I think Terry Gordy, I think Abdullah the Butcher. So did these guys need, flabby belly variants? I mean, Chisel's abs probably not, but you got to think which body type fit the mold better. It doesn't matter. Uh, you couldn't put chiseled abs on Abdullah Butcher, so I'm glad a figure like that only got one variant right. But at least it shows you that there are variants to be on the lookout for in regards to these particular figures. Next one up, we got, oh, one thing I didn't mention. In Series 1, we classified as the Yellow Banner series, right? Even though technically the last figure we looked at was a Red Banner. Uh, well, actually, there were two variants, which was Baron von Raschke and Rick Martel. and two variants. One of them actually was a yellow banner, and the other one was a red banner. But in Series 2, we classify this as the red banner, right? And I haven't been showing that off as the red banner. But these first two were tag teams. This red banner is the main event. This one says a battle to the finish, which features Larry Zbyszko going up against Ric Flair. So, Larry Zbyszko. Fun fact, Larry Zbyszko, I didn't even realize how tiny this man was. I mean, like, I'm short. Like, I'm not short, but like, I'm like 5'7". So, I mean, for a wrestler, most wrestlers got to be, 6 feet tall, and above, right? So, Larry Zbyszko, he has to be like 5'9" or so. And, so that's relative. I mean, that for, well, no. I mean, today's modern man is about 5'7", 143 pounds, which I think is crazy to hear that number. You once upon a time you used to think that your average guy was 6 feet, 200 pounds, and I think 6 feet is like way up there. So I think the average 5'7", 150, 160, 175 is probably fair, but 143 just seems way too small. But so maybe 5'9" isn't too bad, but 5'9", I'm like, really? You look at him, he doesn't look that short to me. Like you would think most of these guys are over 6 feet tall. But Larry Zbyszko, and of course Zbyszko isn't his real last name. That's like a stage name, ring name. He is married to Vern Gagne's daughter. So Vern Gagne has dropped the belt to Larry Zbyszko, I believe, once or twice. So, Larry Zbyszko, I think he held the AW Championship a couple times, whatnot. So, and I hate that the Darren sticker has fallen off and dropped down there. Son of a gun. Oh, Wretched, one of my viewers, he mentioned that there might be a Larry Zbyszko variant with a red and white jacket, and I didn't know that because I haven't seen a Larry Zbyszko with multiple jacket variants. I'm only familiar with one with the red, so I actually have to start looking on eBay, looking around to see if I can find one with a alternate red and white jacket. If you guys know of any variants or selling any variants with a red and white jacket, let me know because you know me, I'm all about variants, and I want to add a new one to the collection if that's the case. But there is Visco with the red jacket, obviously, is the most common, and I mean it's a very thin, soft one. It looks good, but like I said, it's very thin. Yeah, that's definitely original. For a second, they're kind of feeling this one. It felt like it might have been a custom, but looking at the card, no, it's definitely original. Good head sculpt. Actually, if you look up a picture of Larry Zbyszko, that's probably got to be the closest resemblance of any of the figures, any of the characters. I mean, they do a pretty good job of mimicking Ric Flair, but I think Larry Zbyszko of all the figures is probably the one that's probably most closely resembles the real life character. So I think that's pretty awesome. Face wise. Your Larry Zbyszko figure, and of course Ric Flair. Now Ric Flair, you don't really have to say much about Ric Flair. Ric Flair's been around for a million years. There's not a person on the planet who hasn't grown up watching Ric Flair. So on eBay right now, there's a Ric Flair encased. I think it's a CSA graded So no title belt, which kind of sucks. But it's got him with robe and kind of like a little sticker. Don't like the stickers, but to each their own. It is graded, so that's nice. I think the last time I checked, it was up to $60. Getting the fact that it's encased, acrylic case with grading, I threw a bid at it to see where I'd be, but at $60, do I want to spend $60 on a Ric Flair Remco when it's not packaged up, but it's graded? I might, but it depends on how high I want to go. Do I want to go $75? Do I want to go $100? And probably that's going to be probably the only loose or graded Remco figure I ever buy. So, and if I'm forced to buy one graded Remco figure, then I'm probably got to buy all of them graded, and I know that's never going to happen, right? But there is no doubt that Ric Flair has one of the greatest robes, one of the greatest accessories in the entire Remco line, no doubt. I mean, I think when it comes to accessories, the Matt Mania Series 5 figures are the only ones that really beat him out. I mean, Buddy Rose has probably, if not number one, probably in the top three, top four. the Russian bullshit. The Russian probably has one of the best. Nano Cassidy definitely up there. So yeah, he's probably in the top five. Definitely, I would say. So maybe Barbarian possibly would be number four. I don't know. I hate to ruin good Remco figures, but like any customizer that wants to go take a Ric Flair, paint the trunks black, maybe paint them green or blue, give those different color schemes. I probably wouldn't mind those type of variants. It's a very easy paint job, very easy customization. You're just basically changing one simple aspect of the figure, maybe. And like Larry Zbyszko, very closely resembles the real life Ric Flair. But in the 80s, I think his hair was very much longer, like long past the shoulders. So I don't think his hair was that short in the 80s. So maybe they could have made his hair a little bit longer. All right. And of course, another main event, the second release of Rick Martel versus Baron Van Raschke. Another battle to the finish. So I also brought out Series 1 once again. Series 1, which had Rick Martel on the left side. And in Series 2, Rick Martel is on the right side. Also, in Series 1, Rick Martel with the championship belt. The banner is in yellow. That's with the championship belt. All right. So not much more to say about these figures that I didn't already say. And yeah, I do have two sets of Rick Martel and Baron von Raschke listed or showcased on my display case. One for each series. So one situated on each shelf. Even though Baron von Raschke doesn't come with the championship belt, these damn championship belts are like impossible to wrap around the waist. I'm a damn adult. I still can't get the damn belts around the waist. I don't know how kids were able to wrap these darn belts around the waist when they were young. So awesome belts. I want to get them for my figures that need them, but darn are they impossible to close. They're so freaking hard. So I love the fingers with Baron von Raschke because you just gotta poke it through his finger and you're good to go. And again, an awesome freaking robe. The Baron again. He was like 45 in 1985 when his figure came out. So definitely one of the older superstars. And Rick Martel, AWA Remco, WWF LJN, WWF Hasbro. The only guy to get three straight action figures from three straight toy lines. For Kurt Hennig and Rick Martel, you're talking about not only two of the younger guys, but two of the biggest superstars, two of the greatest wrestlers in the AWA history. Yeah, Vern Gagne, he may have been promoter, owner, most tenured guy ever with the championship belt, but these guys, these young guys, they really carried it. I think I'm wondering, I'm trying to think. No, no, he wasn't the last champion, but I think right before he jumped ship to WWF, he was champion and he had a drop before he left. But yes, he had to slap a Rick Martel shirt on my Bill Irwin because I don't have a darn jacket for this guy. Well, Rick Martel, I mean, I think most of us grew up watching Rick Martel in WWF, especially in the 90s. So, again, here's another guy that we really don't have to say a whole lot about because we have history with them. So, well, that does close out the Series 2 review of the AWA Remcos. Series 3 is much smaller. There are only three official releases, three, uh, three, three packs in Series 3. So three packs, nine figures, but two of the three packs I do have variants. So we're going to be looking at five different carded figures, but the two variants are basically just flabby bellies compared to chiseled abs. So Jimmy Garvin chiseled abs versus flabby belly, or who was the other one? Terry Gordy chiseled abs versus chiseled abs versus flabby belly, variants, for example. So uh, that's basically it. So it's not like it's going to make the video go any longer than necessary, but that's going to be series 3. And following week, we're going to look at the Series 4 grudge matches on Black Card, my favorite series of them all. Series 5, as of right now, I only have one carded Series 5 figure. I might pick up a Dick Worley referee on card. Now, there is one a little bit more affordable. It's got a damaged bubble or major bubble lift, but compared to what other people are selling it for as a perfect bubble, I might just buy the damaged bubble. Who cares about a little bit of an opening, right? Tape that up, it's fine. At least that'll give me a second carded Matt Mania figure. And at least I have all of the Matt Mania loose figures, so that's fine. Um, some of the some of the bigger Matt Mania characters, like Barbarian, the Sheik, and the Russian. Those three figures are customs. Now, if I try to buy, I keep seeing the originals of those three pop up on eBay now, but they're individually, those are like $400 to $500 figures, and I'm not paying $500 for a Remco. It's just not happening. Not for a loose figure. So I'm good with the customs on those. You look at them, they look just like the original figure, so it doesn't matter. For my purposes, it's fine. But the rest of them are originals and they serve my purposes. And I'm also going to include three referees. I think two of those referees were actually part of the wrestling ring. So, not part of the original Matt Mania outside of Dick Worley, but I'll include them as part of Series 5 so that we can look at all the referees together. And we'll close out the sixth video by looking at the belt, the wrestling rings, and the thumb wrestlers. And If I can find anything else AWA Remco related, I'll try to throw that into that video as well. But right now, that's pretty much it. All right, guys, as always, thank you so much for tuning in. I will see you in the next video. Thanks, everybody.